Hi. Right. Okay, so I was just watching this documentary on Crowley, Alistair Crowley. It's on my G+. If you ask me, I'll put a link to it in this channel. It's about a 2-hour documentary. I think it's 2006 or something. It's quite interesting. He's a creepy guy, you know. I got one of the first things I read of Crowley's was because I was interested in astrology, and I just come across this. It was a cheap, like, paperback with Crowley's writings on Uranus and Neptune. So some of the more recently developed planets. I think this was written before the discovery of Pluto. And they're really quite. The thing's got pretty good stuff, you know. I also read his autobiography or his confessions, and but this documentary was a bit more creepy because it gives you like when he writes his autobiography, he's only telling you what he wants you to hear. So when you hear stories from other people that knew him and stuff, then you see that he's a bit more creepy. You know, he's not someone I'd want to spend time with, you know. Although I find some of his writings quite, you know, interesting and okay, comparing him to Stalin, right? This is why, because the reason I'm making a comparison between Alistair Crowley and Joseph Stalin is because well, it's a few times, you know, I've had like little discussions with people and stuff online about Crowley, and people get like really they're repeating basically repeating the newspaper headlines from when he was alive, saying he was the wickedest man in the world. But if you look at this documentary, right, and then you look at a documentary about Stalin, and there's just no comparison. It's like the difference between a feather and a 10-ton truck, you know, in terms of weight. And if you want to regard them as like evil or wicked, there's just no comparison. There's no evidence that Crowley ever killed anybody, or was ever responsible for, not completely responsible for any single person's death. You know, he never spent any time in jail for murder or anything like that. But when you look at what Stalin did, he's responsible for millions and millions of horrible deaths, you know, people being worked into like exhaustion and death, people being starved. Just it's unfathomable. And yet if you mention Stalin, people just go all quiet. They don't know how to they can't measure it. It's like they think Crowley is a really evil person, right? Although he didn't actually really do any real harm, didn't actually hurt anyone. I mean, that's not completely true, but it's like he didn't kill anyone, and apparently, or we don't, not as far as anyone knows for sure, there's no evidence that he actually killed anyone or is actually responsible completely for anyone's deaths. Although it's maybe a few, maybe a handful that, like, quite probably he was, you know, but it's not like 20 million. There's this saying, right? I don't know where it's from, but it's a quote from somewhere. I'm just trying to like paraphrase it or put it, you know, what it was is that if 20 people are murdered, right, then that's a horrible tragedy, right? A terrible tragedy. But if 20 million people were murdered, then that's a statistic. And it's like, this is how people are. They have all these strong feelings for someone like Crowley, just this little guy who maybe, you know, was responsible for a few people's lives, possibly. They get really strong feelings about it. They say how evil he is. He was a terrible person and stuff like. But when it comes to Stalin, they just go quiet. They haven't got anything to say. It's like we're not, for most people, it seems we haven't got the programming, we haven't got the mental capacity to like put these things in proper perspective. You know, 20 million deaths is just like it just the brain just stops working. It just can't visualize it. It can't sort of put it into perspective. So it looks for something that it can put in perspective. It can visualize and understand, which is someone that's maybe responsible for a handful of murders. Oh, that's a really terrible person. And they completely ignore the person who's responsible for 20 million. It's like the difference between a feather and a 10-ton truck, you know? Demonic stupidity again, you know? I mean, it's obvious, really, that these are completely different things. So why do so many people focus on the little guy and ignore, you know, the little tiny evil, and, you know, focus on and ignore the huge, great big evil, you know? It's like this thing with mobs. When you get a lot of people together, like a riot, like the thing in Rwanda, you know, like in I think was it the 90s? All those people in Africa, they just started chopping up all the other people that were different to them. There was the Tutsis. I forget the name of the two. One of the tribes was the Tutsis. And one of these tribes just started killing all the rest of the tribes, you know, just hacking them to pieces with machetes, you know, big knives, just chopping them up while they were still alive. And they just all went mad. You know, they all just go crazy. And that's what most people are like that. They're prone to go into like this meltdown, you know, and just go crazy. You know, like what Stalin done was he basically starved and enslaved nearly his whole population. He got these people in these gulags, like sending intellectuals, any intelligent people, to Siberia to mine gold with hardly any food, freezing cold conditions, no heating, and they lasted on average about 3 months. Just turned the whole of Russia into slavery. But then, yeah, it's bizarre. You can't make sense out of it. It's demonic stupidity again. There's a film about because it's a weird thing. It's like how does this happen to people? You know, generally, if you speak to people, if I speak to people one-to-one, they're usually quite nice. Most people are quite nice people. You can get on with them. But when you get them all in a big group, they can go crazy, you know. Something changes in the way they think. And small groups are okay. Small groups are usually okay, but when you get like a big mass of people, it's like the riot consciousness, the mob consciousness. It just it takes over. Most people like just go along with it, like they're all herd animals, just in a sort of stampede. That's a good analogy, actually. You know, like you get a stampede of wildebeest or something. People get like that. You know, they just lose all their inhibitions and they just become monsters. The same things happens in a like a political way as well. Yeah, so part of the work, you know, it's like learning to stand separate from people, to have a hermetic existence, so that you're not like, you don't allow yourself to be sucked into that kind of like unconscious group activity. You know, like getting mobile phones, these new smartphones. Like, I just won't get one because I know that they're evil. Or watching TV because it's evil. But even computers are probably becoming like that. I feel like I'm going off my computer. I want to get rid of it. Really, I don't like it. I feel like it's becoming more and more like a vampire in my house. You know, it demands attention. It's uncompromising. Like on YouTube, right? I can watch some of my videos sometimes. If I make a video like this live, then straight afterwards, I can't watch any of my videos. So I have to turn the computer off, leave it for a while, and turn it back on, and then I can watch them again. But sometimes it will like let me watch one video, so I can, you know, like I'm trying to answer the comments on my comments section on the video, but it won't let me watch it, and I can't leave comments because it won't open the video, and it says my browser is not set up for any of the video formats and that. And then I can go and watch another one of my videos which I've made on the exact same format, and it will let me watch it. And I'll go back to the other one and it will say, no, you can't watch this video. You haven't got the format. I've made it exactly the same way. It was completely exactly the same way. And it'll let me watch one, but not the other. It's like, it's an organic organism. It's a moody little bitch. Well, at least it doesn't do what it's supposed to do anyway, you know. Yeah, so Crowley was a bit of a creepy guy. He like when he was a kid, he killed a cat, you know. That's pretty creepy, isn't it? But compared to Stalin, you know, I mean, Stalin was a bank robber when he was young. And then he just took over Russia and, you know, was responsible for millions and millions of deaths, you know, horrible deaths. And people call Aleister Crowley the most wickedest man in the world. It's just so bizarre, you know. I wonder, does anybody know what to do about this? Because obviously most people aren't going to take these things seriously. They're not going to change. You can't get people to change. I mean, these things are common knowledge. People know there's no actual evidence that Crowley was responsible for any murders or anything. There's no hard evidence, but they do know that Stalin was responsible for, you know, upwards of 20 million deaths, horrible deaths. So why do they try to sort of demonize Crowley so much and ignore Stalin? It just, yeah, demonic stupidity. It's like the film I was going to mention. I forgot the name of it. I forgot the name of the author, but the author is the same author who wrote the Twilight books, which they made the films out of about the vampires. You know, the really nice looking vampires, the attractive ones. You know, the good guys, the good vampires. You know. I think it was Stephanie Meyer. That's the one. That's the author, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, she made this film, another book about these aliens that come and invaded the world, and they're these little sort of like shiny things with lots of little fine tentacles, and they live in your head. They go in your ear or something, you know, and they or in the back of your head, and they take over your thoughts, and they suppress your personality and your soul, and they just take over your body. And it's like one of those things. It's an analogy for the alien mind. Carlos Castaneda talks about this in his Don Juan books. And the American native Indians, they talk about this thing, Watiko, which is like this alien mind. And it takes over your body, it takes over your mind, and it feeds you its thoughts. It's kind of like a sort of demonic possession. And it seems to affect most people. So this is one of the reasons people don't like take these things seriously and don't like to think about them, because the alien mind makes you feel like embarrassed about it. But it's not that you're embarrassed. That's not your thoughts. It's the alien mind's thoughts that makes you feel like it's a problem. It makes you feel fearful about it for whatever reason, for all kinds of reasons. So that you just sort of like your mind just shuts down because it injects its fear of being found out into you, so that you become fearful, and then you don't want to. It makes you so you don't want to hear the truth about these things because it frightens you. But it's not actually you that's frightened. It's the demonic thing or the alien thing that's frightened, and it feeds you its fear so that you feel that that you're frightened. So a lot of your thoughts are not actually your thoughts. This is the same kind of thing. There's so many different versions of this idea all throughout all the films that Hollywood make, like the vampire films, the zombie films. It's all basically talking about the same thing, this sort of infection that takes over people's minds and their actions and consciousness. The Matrix films again, you know. I mean, what I feel is that you can, hopefully what we're doing, what humanity is doing is learning by all this. We're taking it in, and people should realize these things. You know, stop thinking of them just as amusing fiction, you know, to keep you frightened. But they're like lessons, they're symbology. There's loads of lessons. There's somebody's version of, because it's very difficult to explain this stuff, because these things are invisible and they're controlling most people's thoughts. It's a really quite complicated thing to talk about. And so what people do instead is they write these fictional movies illustrating them in symbolic ways, like an alien invasion, things you can see. As far as I know, no scientist has ever got a demon and like physical form so that they could like do an operation or study its anatomy and stuff. You know, these things are invisible. Another way of looking at it is like the astral parasites. You know, they're energy beings. You know, they're of a subtle energy that science doesn't know how, well, mainstream science doesn't know how to recognize. I'd like to believe that your intuition, if you develop your intuition, if you clear your mind properly, there's ways of getting rid of these things, like fasting. Fasting for a few days or a day can help your brain start to clear out toxic stuff, so you can see more, you can think more clearly. And it's a traditional way, going back hundreds or thousands of years, of getting rid of demons. Is you just put someone in a room, don't give them any food, and for a few days, and they will, you know, they'll become much more sane and reasonable. I mean, most people I know, as far as I'm aware, have never fasted. I've hardly ever fasted. I've done a couple of days, a couple of years ago. But yeah, I could really do with more fasting. I want to. But again, I think I've got this alien mind trying to control me. There's things I want to do, like stop drinking alcohol. And it's just like, I just keep finding myself buying it, even though I've really tried to be as disciplined as I can, and eating the sort of food I don't want to eat as well. I mean, I have made some progress with gluten. I've given up gluten for, unless it's in this beer, it could be in the beer. But yeah, I've been trying to give up. I've given up as far as I can tell. I mean, there's no allergy thing saying on here that there's gluten in it. No. Oh, it says barley. I suppose there might be gluten in barley. Yeah, so I've made some progress. I've noticed I was having cheese the other day, and I've noticed when I have cheese, I was in a bit of a bad mood this morning, just for no obvious reason. And I think it's because I had cheese yesterday, or I think it was yesterday or the day before. I find if I eat dairy products or specifically cheese, I can get in a bad mood, feel a bit sort of ratty, even depressed. You know, if it's pasteurized cheese, I can actually get like quite depressed. But even just unpasteurized cheese, I just can get a bit ratty, you know, the next day especially. But I know it's the cheese. But I like cheese. I'm not quite, you know, I've been trying to give up all this stuff and change my diet, but there's reasons why it's so difficult. You get programmed apparently from your grandmother, what your grandmother used to eat. You get like really strong impulses and compulsions to eat the same food and drink the same like things. Like I'm sure my grandma, before she had my mum, she was drinking and smoking a lot, you know, drinking alcohol and smoking tobacco. So it seems particularly because it's built into my genes, you know, to drink alcohol and smoke tobacco. So it's really, really hard to give up because you have all these. It's not just a simple matter of giving up an addiction. It's like it's built into your genes. But if you find yourself going and buying alcohol and getting tobacco, whether you want to or not, you don't seem to have any choice. So how do you get rid of that? That's another thing. It's like, how do you override those compulsions? It's, you know, I've been thinking, you know, like you get people that don't eat, they're like anorexic, they don't eat anything. It could well be that their ancestors have gone through starvation periods, and then it gets built into their genes. So as they go through periods where they just don't want to eat because it's built into their genes. So they become anorexic. They just don't want to eat anything. They go onto like a starvation diet. It's like whether they don't have any choice. A lot of these things, it's like they seem to override your sense of free will. Doesn't matter how hard you try sometimes with these things, you just can't make any progress. It's virtually impossible. Something else takes over. So you can go on from this. You know, there are other things. How much free will do we have? Did Crowley have free will, for example? Maybe he was just he was compelled and he didn't have any choice. Maybe Stalin didn't have free will. But this is something about the work as well. Like going into the work, doing the work, you got to start thinking about these things rather than, because what I found is otherwise you can get really hung up on things. I still get hung up on things, you know, thinking that people are evil when perhaps they're not. That perhaps they just don't have a choice. That they're under these compulsions. It's like they've got an alien controlling their mind and pulling the strings, maneuvering them like a puppet or like a demon or whatever, you know. And they just can't change. They don't know. There's nothing. They haven't got any ability to change. They can't exercise their free will. They know that they can't. You know, that they want to do things differently, but they just don't know how to do it. They don't have the equipment. They don't have the mental equipment or whatever else it takes to do the things that they would rather do. And so they do all these other things that are just like compulsive and they don't have any control over it. I'd like to think that most people aren't intentionally evil. Okay, I feel like I'm starting to run out of things to say. So thanks for watching, and let me try and sum up. I mean, I basically summed up right at the beginning. Okay, Crowley was a sadist. You know, he used to like beating some of his women, but generally they put up with it. They were like, if you're in a relationship and someone beats you up, you know, then you can just leave, can't you? But no, he was quite often with women who he beat up regularly, and they stayed with him. This is quite normal. This happens all the time. These people are compulsive. It's demonic stupidity. You can't explain it. You can't make sense out of it. This is how things are. It's like, I think they're like astral parasites that just take over people's minds. I mean, you can try and lock yourself in the room. I would like to fast, but I just find myself walking to the supermarket and it's like I'm saying, oh, I want to fast today, but my body just carries on walking. It just goes and buys stuff, you know, and it's just like, it doesn't matter what I want or what my personal desires are. My body's got its own like will of its own. Like it's a horse and I'm the rider in my mind, but the horse is just going for a walk. It's doing its own thing. I can't control it. Oh dear. Okay, you can stop watching now. Yeah, and Stalin, well, I mean, he tore down churches, he murdered loads of the clergy, you know, the vicars and stuff, the priests. He just buried them alive and killed them and done all sorts of terrible things, you know. There's no comparison. I was talking to someone the other day like about Crowley, and you know, I was trying to point out that compared to like the people that run the banks and that are keeping everyone in slavery, because I mean, what the Russians done, or what Stalin done, was pretty terrible. But we've still got we've got a watered down version. Crowley wasn't putting people in slavery. He wasn't torturing people, you know, and murdering them en masse or even in small numbers, as far as we can tell. I know he talked about it. He talked about it and he wrote about it, maybe, you know, but there's no real evidence that he actually done anything like particularly terrible, you know. I mean, he was creepy. He definitely was a creepy guy. I'm not saying he wasn't a creepy guy. I'm not trying to say that he was a great guy, although some of the stuff I've read, you could actually see him in a light that he's almost like Christ, if you look at it from a certain point of view, because of some of the things he done and his ideals and stuff. But I think, you know, on his deathbed, he said that he's one of his last words was that he was perplexed. You know, he didn't know what was going on, and he was a heroin addict. One of the things, because it's like he was obviously doing something similar to the work, right? Or he was trying to. And so one of the things I'm mentioning about him, and I talk about him, I think he's a good. Is you can learn lessons from him, how not to do it. You know, that's how not to do it. You know, you've got to. As far as I'm concerned, this is one of the reasons I wouldn't use heroin. I've given up wheat and gluten. Gluten's like, it affects your body like opium. It's, you know, it's heroin is an opiate derivative. So I'd recommend, you know, giving up gluten, definitely, at least for a couple of years to see how you feel. And also, yeah, don't use opiates, don't use painkillers, because you know, they can make you addicted, and it's not going to help you get rid of these demons and this demonic influence and stuff and get you out of the matrix. They're the sort of things that keep you trapped in the matrix. So it's like you have to sort of do what you can. You have to use the little bit of free will that you have got to sort of start clearing space, and like clearing the physical body out, and get it as working as efficiently and healthy as you can, so that you can start and live a hermetic lifestyle for a while, so that you can, you know, you don't get trapped in cycles of dealing with people in like with bad emotions and stuff and bad feelings. And so you want to be feeling like clear in yourself and healthy, clear-minded. You have to you want to be developing free will. If you're having problems doing things you want to do because you've got all these compulsive behaviors, then you need to do a lot of work. That's what the work is. You know, it's about clearing away these compulsive behaviors like smoking and drinking, you know, and not doing exercise and things like that. Eating the wrong food, you know. I'm still trying to find out how to do these things. There's the vampire thing, you know, like there's this idea, and there's a fair amount of like evidence. I mean, it's not hard evidence that you can know for sure, but a lot of people talk about like the elites doing these demonic rituals, you know, using like child abuse and murder and sacrificing people and stuff like that, you know. And but also other things, using symbology and astrology, you know, in a dark way, you know, to sort of manipulate the masses and, you know, send out these energies in the astral plane that just affect everyone. These dark, it's like dark magic rituals, satanic rituals. That can maybe like what they might be doing is like enhancing the energy of these evil forces that are like like possessing people, this alien mind. See, there's different like theories, and they're not completely compatible. But it seems to me that there are only there's only a handful of possibilities of what's going on, and it pretty much all seems suspicious to me. So I can't say definitely that it's one thing or another, but it's suspicious. It's all suspicious. So then I feel that I have to make some sort of conclusion. If what these elites are doing is really suspicious and they can't be trusted, right? Then you have to develop a certain course of action through your life, so that it doesn't really matter which thing they're actually trying to do, whether they're trying to destroy the whole planet, because there's a Gnostic idea that this whole world is a matrix. It's like a prison, but we don't really belong here. It's a trap to sort of suck the energy, just like in the Matrix films. They're sucking the energy out of people. They're using us like fuel to sort of keep them happy, sort of thing. And there's other films about this sort of thing as well, that we're being hot, you know, we're basically being grown for our organs and stuff, you know, and harvested by sort of like aliens that are just like us, but they use us as like fuel so they can live a really long time, but we don't. Like it's basically the same thing. The same with the vampire thing, you know, the vampires suck the blood of people. I mean, it's talked about in the Bible when you've got the whore of Babylon drinks the blood of the saints and stuff, you know. It's basically the same theme. It's like a parasitical thing, or a sort of like viral kind of thing that takes over people's consciousness and then controls their body and makes them like the living dead, you know. And it's to me, it's obviously a real thing, because I can't communicate with people, you know, about this sort of thing. They're like, It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is another one. It's like they look human, but they've got no human emotions. They've got no soul. They're more like insects. You know, I can't relate to most people. It's like I try to talk about these things, and virtually everyone I know, with a very few exceptions, virtually everyone I know is. It's like they can't talk about this stuff. They just don't. It doesn't register. You know, there's no one there. It's like they suddenly, like, they go blank. It just goes in one ear and out the other. They can't talk about it. And it's usually these people as well. I can't talk to them about the banking system. I can't talk to them about how the government's all a scam. Voting is just a scam. It doesn't matter who you vote for. They're all controlled by the same people. Or the medical establishment. It's all just, they're monsters. They're vampires. You know, they're completely evil. It's really obvious. You know, you don't have to be that clever to work it out. But still, most people, even intelligent people, it seems, will still go to the doctors and let them get poisoned by them. You know. I mean, how do you explain it? Again, it's like demonic stupidity. Okay, so I see all this stuff, and it's like, now, so what's the response? What's the correct response? Now, to me, it's doing the work. Making your life better. You know, doing what you can to develop your consciousness, find out what's going on, see clearly, you know, be aligned, have all your energies aligned so that you can, you know what's happening. We're just coming up, there's some interesting astrology going on at the moment. We're going to have, we're just coming up for this conjunction of the Sun and Mercury and Jupiter. And that's, in some ways, that's supposed to help align all your energies. So it's quite good. It works for everyone. So it's in Sagittarius. So Jupiter rules in Sagittarius. It's like the heart energy. Mercury is going to be more with your third eye and possibly your crown chakra and your aura. Jupiter also can rule your base chakra, and the Sun, anyway, it's like, yeah, the higher and lower, that they're all going to be in alignment. So it's a good time to sort of like, I don't know. It's probably going to be different for everyone, you know. But this alignment, it's a time. It's probably worth spending time just doing a bit of meditation, going for a walk. I probably don't even need to tell anyone this. They're doing it automatically, you know. I might as well just do an update because I'm trying to think what else I was going to say, you know, because I want to make videos sometimes and I just forget all the stuff I was going to say, and I only talk about a tiny fraction. So I'm just leaving this video running because it's live, so I can talk about some of the other things that I've forgotten to talk about some of quite often. And okay. I was just remembering something. What was it? See, I shouldn't have even texted it. I should have just gone straight into it and said what I was going to say, rather than tell you why I'm waiting there. Let's try that. Rubbing your ears can help with like remembering stuff. I saw this interesting exercise on a video the other day, like where you put your two fingers like this in your temples, in that little sort of soft spot there. Press quite firmly, but not too firm, not so it hurts. and just move you around in circles, like forward, like circles, for about 30 seconds. And it massages this bone or some sort of cartilage in your between your brain, and it stimulates your pineal gland. It can clear your sinuses. And it does other things because it stimulates your pineal gland. It can stimulate all this other stuff going on, all your other glands in your body. It could be really powerful. And then after 30 seconds, you put one finger on top of the other like that, and then just move them up and down like that. Another 30 seconds. I noticed, like, because sometimes when I'm trying to go to sleep, my sinuses are a bit blocked. So I've been finding if I do this, it unblocks my sinuses, and I can breathe a lot better. You almost feel automatically that you're going to like start, you start breathing more deeply. Yeah, no, it's completely gone what I was going to say. It seems I did have something interesting to say, but well, I've got no viewers at the moment. That's nice. I feel relaxed when there's no viewers and no chat. I mean, I don't mind a bit of chat, but it can distract me a little bit. But you see, I distract myself, so I don't mind the chat because it doesn't really make any difference. I still get like confused and stuff. And let me backtrack. What was I talking about? I was talking about the alignment of in the astrology. No, I got this nice beer from Lidl. It's see, it's 10.5%. It doesn't look very good there, does it? Can't really see it very well. No, that's a terrible picture, isn't it? Maybe the light's not very good. Anyway, it's 10.5%. It's like it's an after dinner beer. I've had my dinner, so after dinner beer is good. I wonder if I can trim this down and just trim the last 10 minutes off the video. Okay, I think I'm going to stop it now because I could sit here for an hour trying to remember what I was going to say, and I might not remember it, and that'd just be wasting your time, won't it?